How to come up with a great idea. The first thing to figure out is, why is coming up with an idea even important? Well, for entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, sometimes you want to do things bigger and better, and you know that you can improve what you're doing, but you don't know what the big idea is and how to find it. And in a church, it could be very similar. You want to do things bigger and better, and you know that you can improve upon what you're doing, but again, you don't know what the big idea is, and you don't know how to find it. People come up with 3 $1 million ideas a year. It could be that this idea just pops into their head, or however else they might come up with it, but often they don't recognize it as an opportunity. So we are going to talk about why people might overlook their own ideas. Because really, what is the point of having a great, fabulous idea if you don't use it? So to start off, start thinking. Have you ever come up with a great idea? Look back. Think about what that great idea might be. Or, number 2, what idea have you heard of that you thought was great? Here's a quick interview of people who had great ideas. We hit the street to get your big idea. We're running the Social Innovation Challenge. It is an opportunity to share all of your great ideas for the neighborhood, and you can win startup funding for it. So we're asking people around the city right now, what would you love to see to improve your neighborhood or maybe even the world?
Around the city, you always see these beautiful historic buildings being torn down and replaced with these massive condos. I like to see more open platforms and more access for the public to contest those issues.
I'd like to see a continuous ice skating trail along the waterfront so people can commute to work by skating during the winter time.
Do you have an idea you want to share?
Not really. I'm sorry. I don't.
How about now?
My idea is to create some kind of a program that would connect youth from different communities with music and musical instruction. I know it's really expensive for people to buy musical instruments and to learn, and there are so many people that are passionate about music and teaching music, so some way to kind of connect youth and share that passion.
The idea that we're living in a big city of neighborhoods and that everybody that walks down the street is our neighbor, and that's why we're out on the street, is to get people to get out the blinders off and say, whoa, there's this thing going on in the street, and now I'm listening to music from this part of the world and meeting my neighbor from this other part of the world.
Might have low taxes. Low taxes are really important. I've got a lot of seniors, a lot of young families, and keeping taxes down is really important to make the city affordable and livable.
My big idea is very simple. It's this big also. It's a pin. It's called For a Friendlier City. And basically what it is, it's a pin that you wear and it allows people to approach you. So if that person was sitting on the bench and we wanted to talk, if I was wearing the pin and he was wearing the pin, we walk up and we have a nice conversation.
One of my last ideas was you could run non-profit space for people finishing their life and transitioning and helping their family going through that process. I think as long as we keep creative about solving issues as opposed to just making more money, I think we're on the right track.
We're going to walk through what classifies as a new idea. Is it actually new? We're going to talk about what types of new ideas are there. This should have you thinking more creatively. Then, how to find them. And how do you know if they are a good idea? For this, we are going to use the Quadruple bottom line assessment tool. What classifies as an idea? The following is the definition that is used by patents in order to determine if someone can patent a new product or process. This is not the only way to judge if something is an idea, and it doesn't mean that every new idea needs to be patented, but it is a starting point to classify what actually is an idea. The first thing is it novel? If you see an idea that is used down the street and start doing it at your own house, that's not necessarily novel. There could be some controversy here, though, because if you see what someone else is doing it, and maybe you do it in a completely different context, or maybe you improve upon that idea in some way, that could be considered novel. The second thing is it useful? The pet rock is a bad example as it wasn't actually useful, but it turned out to be a great idea as it became a multi-million-dollar business actually, but it wasn't in fact useful. So this is an important lens to use. Is what you're doing actually going to have some sort of value that you're adding to its stakeholders, to the congregation, or to people in general? And the last one here is it inventive? Is this obvious or not to others? Could anyone have come up with the idea? What types of new ideas are out there? There's many different types of ideas. It might not just be a brand new product. In fact, often it's not. One new type of idea could be new ways to connect with people. An example on the for-profit side is the Pepsi Taste Challenge. It was a new way to connect with people, and it quickly became more recognizable than actually the Coca-Cola promotions at the time. A church example could be that text messaging donations and engagement is something that is being experimented with right now by the Pentecostal assemblies. So this is a brand new way to connect with donors and to engage with the congregation. Another type of new idea could be a new market. So if your idea already works in one context, could it work somewhere else? The church question here that you could be considering to ask yourself as a congregation is, could what you are doing now work somewhere else? A great example is a satellite church. This is being experimented right now in North Bramalea, where they're actually looking at having church not in a church building, but in a community center, or in a soul cafe, or actually in a home. Another type of idea could be a new structure or business model. An example might be Tides Canada, where they actually allow new nonprofits to use their existing HR and IT and admin and their insurance in order to launch a new nonprofit idea. The church example of this could be an administrator actually once at a church just started to allow startups and social enterprises to use their space, and they started allowing them to use the space for free. Specifically, a tutoring company started to do that, and they now are actually a major room donor, and they have a good partnership and relationship with the church. Another example could be a youth center that was actually started at a church in Mississauga. And at the beginning, they shared the governance structure of the church until the youth center became financially sustainable enough to go off on their own. And the model had been proven to create its own incorporation at that time. So they waited until proof of concept in order to change the structure. Another new idea could be new human resource models. A church example of this could be actually, instead of just having a church council, could you have a board of advisors from the community that's outside of the church to actually increase the number of volunteers and the network of volunteers and the base that you have in your neighborhood. So looking not only inside the church for your board of advisors, but outside the church. Another new type of idea could be a new process. Often this is when someone with a new lens or new view sees how things could actually be improved or different. Something that you could ask yourself as a congregation or a way to do this is, how do you welcome new members or curious individuals? Another type of idea is a new product or service, which is kind of the basic one that most people usually think about first, but for churches probably not as relevant. New products and services need to have a way to evaluate which ones to be doing up front, and they often have a high failure rate. In fact, in the grocery industry, it's less than 1% of new ideas are actually going to fly. So how do you evaluate what makes sense? A church example of a product or service could be maybe selling meat pies. Raw Carrot is a social enterprise that works in a Presbyterian church in Paris, Ontario, and they sell healthy soups that are made by marginalized individuals. So this is a neat way of actually having a product or service in a church context. And another type of new idea would be the new financing models. So church examples could be looking at crowdfunding or community bonds. And there's lots of different options, and people are experimenting in different ways here. So where can you find these ideas? So there's 5 major ways that you can actually identify these ideas or come up with them. It's either personal experience, your hobbies or things that you're doing, accidental, intentional, or new information. And we're going to dive into these. Personal experiences. One example is one day I was actually sitting on a bus opening up my newspaper. I also wanted to have my coffee. It was impossible to do everything at the same time. I realized it would be great to have a portable coffee holder. I saw my own problem and realized that there was an opportunity to fix this. Example number 2 for personal experiences is my father came up with a selfie stick about 10 years ago. He had the problem of traveling with my mother, which was not actually the problem. The problem was taking pictures together. So he created the selfie stick to solve his own problem. Unfortunately, he did not commercialize it. And the last example here is the church example. CanadaHelps.org was actually invented and founded in a church. The founder was sitting in a church pew on a Sunday and realized that they wished they could donate to their congregation by their phone or maybe from their computer. That was the impetus to creating an online portal for donations that was easy for the user and for the charity. So the question, was there something that happened in the last 6 months that could be further explored? And do you have a personal experience that needs a solution? Hobbies. An example is that I've recently taken up golf. And I even started to watch a little more golf on TV. One thing that struck me was that there are not that many female caddies. And recently, a pitch on Dragon's Den was a company that provided female caddies. But it was from my own hobby and myself doing it that the idea became apparent to me. A church example is this innovation could be that you like to do yoga. Maybe you feel more spiritually grounded when you're peacefully doing yoga. With this hobby in mind and your own experience, you might want to offer this as another form of worship at your church. So the question to consider, when do you feel spiritually grounded or connected? What hobbies do you have? Are there ideas that are coming from this? Accidental. So the examples here is a family in Welland, Ontario owned a convenience store. The apartment above the convenience store wanted to get rid of a mattress and leaned it against the side of the store. A passerby came into the convenience store and asked how much the mattress cost. That was actually the beginning of Leon's. The church example. A small elderly congregation was gathered inside a church. They realized that there was another gathering of youth outside of the church using their parking lot as a gathering place. 2 elderly women in the congregation decided to offer the youth in the parking lot some hot chocolate one day as it was cold. The youth were very much appreciative. Because really, who doesn't like hot chocolate? Over the months, the 2 groups continued to interact over hot chocolate. The gatherings grew. Some of the gatherings moved inside, and the ministry today is still called Hot Chocolate. So the question is, what was something that happened in the last 6 months that could be explored further? Intentional. This is similar to how an inventor typically operates. They have a goal and try to create that via a prototype or otherwise. DataWind is an example. They are a tech company that decided to make technology hardware more affordable, specifically for third world countries. They saw the need, but had to figure out how to do that. They created their own intellectual property and created a tablet that is only $35. They had a goal, they saw the need, and they drove towards that intentionally. The church example of this is Trinity Live in Thunder Bay, where they realized it was important to be able to provide a live stream service at a cost-effective price point for churches to worship together. They have the experience with broadcasting and were able to find equipment that would be able to be at a high enough quality but at a low enough cost. When other congregations wanted to join the live streaming service, they worked to create a way to integrate the services and continuing to make sure that these other locations could afford the technology. So they actually were intentional on making sure that it was affordable and using this technology. So a question you could ask yourself is, what is something that we need to intentionally create? And finally, new information. Sick Kids has done some research to show that highly allergic foods need to be introduced earlier to children to help reduce their chance of becoming allergic, up to 70%. New information like this allows for new innovations. Maybe a new baby food company could use this to add in allergic food content. So maybe they actually do have some sort of peanut butter baby food. The church example is a church was exploring how they could better help the community and become more relevant in the neighborhood. By inviting the other community leaders to speak about what was needed and how they could collaborate, a coalition was formed to help fill these gaps. Immediately, it was recognized that the church was actually the building closest to the marginalized individuals in the community and could be used more effectively by leveraging the resources of 30 other organizations in the neighborhood and making sure that the location was better used. Speaking with your neighbors, networking with other faith organizations or nonprofits, and keeping faith top of mind could allow you to find new opportunities through new information. It is sometimes interesting where ideas come from and how we can expose ourselves to these ideas. Sometimes it's just talking about it or creating space where the ideas can come. So the question is, what new information do we have? What has changed around us? And there's actually great ways to get this new information, because really new information is what's going to spark the imagination. One thing that we can do is listen to each other's stories. In my own congregation, by listening to each other, learning about each other, we found out that actually someone had deep-rooted experience in social enterprise. And so if we were actually looking at creating a community hub and exploring those types of partnerships, we had an amazing resource in our circle. Community roundtables is exactly the example that we had just given of those 30 organizations realizing that the marginalized people were not where all the organizations were. And it was only the church building that was actually in the right place to deliver social services. Another way is to walk around the neighborhood. We call these prayer walks, where you're intentionally looking to see what's needed. Maybe we could invite someone as a secret shopper on a Sunday morning service to see give us a different perspective, a different lens, more and new information. Maybe we could speak with other organizations that use our building. So if we do have rental groups, what are they seeing? Are they seeing other opportunities? Is there other information that we're missing that they know about the neighborhood? We could attend community gatherings. We could volunteer or partner with other organizations and bring this information back to our congregation. Are there other ways that we can be listening? And from all of this, are some ideas percolating? One thing to do is actually write things down that are percolating throughout this video and start to create a way that you plan to start continuing to gather more information to keep these ideas percolating based on what the neighborhood is asking for. So the last question here is, how do we assess our ideas? The quadruple bottom line takes the normal way of actually looking at nonprofits and social enterprises, being the financial impact, the social impact, as well as the ecological impact. But the unique part of the United Church of Canada is that we bring the fourth bottom line, being the spiritual impact. So looking at these four bottom lines, does your idea match all four of them, or three of them, or two of them? How much? How well? So thinking about it in this way. So what we talked about is what classifies as a new idea, what types of new ideas are there, where can you find them, how do you know if they're a good idea? And what we suggest now is to take a notebook and have it on you at all times and start writing down your great ideas. I'll bet you that you're more creative than you think you are. And don't forget that everyone comes up with 3 $1 million ideas a year. Have an idea to change the world? Come to the Social Innovation Challenge. If you have a great idea, wonderful. If you don't, you should come too to connect and help these ideas get off the ground. So what's in a pitch? The first thing is, what's the big challenge or opportunity out there? And the second, how are you going to solve it? We hit the street to get your big idea. We're running the Social Innovation Challenge. It is an opportunity to share all of your great ideas for the neighborhood, and you can win startup funding for it. So we're asking people around the city right now, what would you love to see to improve your neighborhood or maybe even the world?
Around the city, you always see these beautiful historic buildings being torn down and replaced with these massive condos. I like to see more open platforms and more access for the public to contest those issues.
I'd like to see a continuous ice skating trail along the waterfront so people can commute to work by skating during the wintertime.
Do you have an idea you want to share?
Not really. I'm sorry. I don't.
How about now?
My idea is to create some kind of a program that would connect youth from different communities with music and musical instruction. I know it's really expensive for people to buy musical instruments and to learn, and there are so many people that are passionate about music and teaching music, so some way to kind of connect youth and share that passion.
The idea that we're living in a big city of neighborhoods and that everybody that walks down the street is our neighbor. And that's why we're out on the street, is to get people to get out the blinders off and say, whoa, there's this thing going on in the street, and now I'm listening to music from this part of the world and meeting my neighbor from this other part of the world.
Might have low taxes. Low taxes are really important. I've got a lot of seniors, a lot of young families, and keeping taxes down is really important to make the city affordable and livable.
My big idea is very simple. It's this big also. It's a pin. It's called For a Friendlier City. And basically what it is, it's a pin that you wear and it allows people to approach you. So if that person was sitting on the bench and we wanted to talk, if I was wearing the pin and he was wearing the pin, we walk up and we have a nice conversation.
One of my last ideas was you could run non-profit space for people finishing their life and transitioning and helping their family going through that process. I think as long as we keep creative about solving issues as opposed to just making more money, I think we're on the right track.
Think you have a great idea to make the world a better place? Join us at the Social Innovation Challenge.